discussing the issues and celebrating the successes of the African American community. This is Another View.
Hello everyone, I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Welcome to Another View. Our topic is not an easy one to talk about, and some of you may even think that we're airing our dirty laundry, as the saying goes. But on Another View, we discuss the issues that face the African American community. And it's an unfortunate fact that according to the latest census, 10.4% of the entire African American male population, ages 25 to 29, are incarcerated. That's compared to 2.4% for Hispanic males and 1.2% for white males. In Virginia, as of 2008, 58.6% of the entire prison population consists of black men. What effect does this have on the black family? And how are the women who are left behind able to keep the family intact? How are they able to cope psychologically, socially, and spiritually? Here to talk about this critical issue for our community is Reesy Floyd-Thompson, Director of Prisoners' Wives, Girlfriends, and Partners; Claudia Williams, a social worker with the Family Integration Program, Department of Human Services, Norfolk; and Reverend Dr. Sheriel Daniels, the Director of VTC, a new program to help families and inmates stay in touch. Welcome to the program, ladies. Thanks so much for joining us today. Now, I have to tell you, Reesy, you sent us a letter, and you talked about some of those statistics that I read and about this issue. And Lisa and I, our co-producer, we struggled a little bit with this because we said one of the reasons that we started the show is that we were tired of seeing the media portray black men in handcuffs. But it's something that we cannot ignore.
Right.
So you have a personal story to tell. Tell us that story.
Well, I am married to a man who's incarcerated. He has been incarcerated for 6 years now. We have about 4 more years to do. And as a result of this incarceration, I felt that there was something that I wanted to do to help other people in my situation. As I have visited him over the years, I have seen women come and go. And I wondered, why was that happening? Because we seem to have a pretty good relationship.
So in other words, you would see them one time and you never see them again?
Yes.
That kind of thing? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And I felt that there wasn't enough support for women like me. All of the support is geared more towards the men inside or families in general. But the primary relationship is very important when you're trying to raise a family with a man, still pay bills, raise kids, and still maintain some sort of intimate relationship. So the primary relationship is very important, and I felt it was something that I could do to help. So I started my organization, Prisoners' Wives, Girlfriends, and Partners, to help in that regard.
So now you have women who come together to support each other?
Yes.
Is that what, and it's more like a support group, you talk about various issues and so forth?
Yes.
Dr. Daniels, Sherry, the society would say, what's up with these women? Why don't they move on? Why don't they go on and do something else? These people have done something wrong, they're incarcerated. Why should we care about this, and particularly in our community?
Well, the reality is she's right. The relationship and making sure that you can keep the semblance of a healthy relationship in spite of the circumstances is very, very important, not just for the person that is incarcerated, but it's also important for the person that is the partner, the spouse, the loved one, the family member, for their health, for their sanity, and for their spiritual well-being. Part of my dilemma as a pastor was moving the congregation beyond getting stuck on the moral, ethical issue of why the person was in jail to the point of reality that the person is in jail. And we have some things that we need to do to keep our community healthy and whole. And I think a big part of that is helping women especially to understand that this is your current reality, but these are some things that you can do to help yourself. These are some things that you can do to help them. And ultimately, these are things that can be done that will help the entire community.
Claudia, the family itself. I mean, when you have a man, and we know there are women also incarcerated, but we are talking about this perspective from the male perspective being locked up. If you're trying to raise kids, and especially I would imagine by the teenage years, if you as the mother are trying to say, you need to do this, the father calls home or communicates and sets down the rule, and the kid says, how can you tell me what to do? You know, how does that family dynamic work?
Well, I think the person who is transitioning or in a correctional facility at times have unrealistic ideas of what's going to happen when they get home. The mother herself, I'll just use the mother as an example, she is what I call the movement. She has been doing all of the things that is necessary to maintain the family. And then you have a monument, which I call the person who is incarcerated. And that person incarcerated is now having to integrate back into the movement. And they come home at times and they really have unrealistic goals. They think that they can pick up where they left off. And that's not so, because mom has been doing all of these things on her own. Now let's look at the adolescent. If the person has been incarcerated for, let's just give it 5 years, a lot of things changed in that time. And they didn't have to listen to the parent, that other parent. You have to, that person has to come back and develop a trust with that child, bond with that child, before they can ever begin to direct that child to do whatever it is they think they should be doing. It's real difficult for a man, particularly a man, when he comes in, he thinks, okay, I'm dad, I said do this, it needs to be done. And the child is like, well, you haven't been taking care of me.
Where did you
Where
come
have
from?
you been?
Right.
We haven't had to do it this way all along. Why do I need to do what he says? He's never here anyway. Or he's just getting back.
So some of the programs that you work with, you help women then to learn how to navigate that?
To
what
understand what to expect on both sides. Like some women will say to the man, well, after the honeymoon period, of course, well, you know, I don't need you. You can leave. And they say that on a constant. And so the guy is saying every time she gets angry, she's telling me I can leave. Well, we have to learn how first to communicate with one another, where we both come to a point where, okay, I'm going to need to learn who you are again, and you're going to need to learn who I am. And so this relationship building is key to success in terms of maintaining the family unit. It is also key to the individual being able to reintegrate back into the community and into the home.
Reesy, when your husband went in, you all were newly married, correct? So how have you been able to maintain that relationship, and what kinds of things do you all talk about as you look forward to him coming home?
One thing that was very important is that we had to realize that you can't have a relationship with one person being disconnected. Yes, he is away from the home, and the DOC, in a sense, has legally separated us, but it is up to us to do everything that we can to make sure that the relationship survives. As what Claudia was talking about, if a person is away from the home for 5 years, you can't have two separate entities thinking that they're going to be separate and then come together at some point. There has to be back and forth communication. In my situation, my husband and I pay bills together. I send him the bills that I pay or that I have to pay. As I was telling Dr. Daniels, that he has 2 jobs in jail. He doesn't make a lot of money, but he's still the husband and the head of this family. So he sends home a percentage of the money that he makes. It's not a lot of money, but he is in a relationship and it's a responsibility. So you don't just disconnect the family. The relationship has to move in the same direction or you have problems.
How do you deal with, from a social perspective, when people say, Reesy, you're so beautiful, you're going to spend the rest of your, life, not the rest of your life, but the next 5-6 years still waiting. Why don't you start dating? Why don't you do something else? How do you deal with that?
First, I take out the word waiting, because I'm not waiting for anything. I am living my life. This is the life that I have. This is the life that is mine. I knew a man who got in trouble, and we all have the capacity to love. We all have the capacity to forgive. People need for there to be something psychologically wrong with me to make sure that they don't have the thing that will make them do what I do. And it's just one day at a time. this is my life. I live it as it has been given to me, and that's it.
You talked to me about some of the people in your group who were struggling with what to tell their children when their spouse was incarcerated. And I'll throw this out to all of you to get your responses, but I believe one person decided that they would rather say the dad was away or he was at work as opposed to telling the truth. What do you think about that?
I don't think it's ever a good idea to lie. And I learned that the hard way, because I used to lie in the beginning. And lying only serves to make other people feel okay with your life. When you're talking about kids, it's just the way that it is. You have to tell the truth. In this situation, this person is still in the county jail, so they're not able to visit yet. Once the person is moved to a prison, she's going to tell them the truth. But I always believe that honesty is the best policy. Just no reason not to tell them.
I agree. I think you should include them in the entire process. I know a lot of people have difficulty with that, but I believe that it is important for the children as well as the adults that they have a connection with their father or mother, because I'm working with both women and men, that they have that connection. And it is an uncomfortable environment, but they still need to know where daddy is, and they still need to be able to have those visitations. I think it's more, it's just healthier for the child than to have this absent parent away, and I can't never touch, see, or have any type of interaction with that person. And I'm constantly living a lie, you know. You don't want to live that lie.
Sharon, one of the things that your new program, the video teleconferencing, does is because sometimes people are sent to prisons far away from home. And so tell us a little bit about this new program that's coming to Norfolk.
I really will. Can I add
Sure,
a point
absolutely.
to the issue in terms of how we tell the truth? I think that's something in our community that we're going to help people deal with in general, not just as it relates to people that are incarcerated, a parent or a loved one. But I think as we start to be more truthful with ourselves in terms of our circumstances, our realities, what's really going on in our lives, that's going to deal with our self-esteem, how we deal with our placement in society and our dignity. And it's also going to help us to just be a little bit happier, because most folk that tell the truth tend to be happy regardless of how hard that truth is.
Right.
And so the best place in the world besides the family home to tell the truth is in the church. And we're dealing with that now, which brings me to why we actually embrace this new initiative. Really, with a conversation with Pastor Owen Cardwell out of Richmond, New Jubilee International, he introduced me to the reality as it was in terms of the prison population, in terms of African Americans, males, but especially now the rise and increase in terms of African American females. Yes. And then we had to talk about how that was impacting the family, especially the children, and what could actually be done to not rectify, but to at least help us to maneuver and deal with these realities. What I didn't know as a pastor was that the average sentence and stay in the Commonwealth of Virginia was 7 years. And so when you think about a 7-year period of time where that person is not in the home but is in that correctional facility, the impact on the child and the children is tremendous. And so for us as a church, as a faith community, we were challenged to say, what can we do as a church beyond the normal expectations that we have of churches, which is the Bible study and the worship and praise. And that's what we do every day. But I believed in my heart, and the church concurred, that we could do a little bit more. And so part of what we tried to do was to say, how can we keep families connected, especially children? How can we do it in a way that would bring dignity to that process, take them beyond the shame and the blame and the guilt and all of those other things, and keep that family connected to the best of our ability. So the video teleconference, well, it's really video conferencing.
Video conferencing. We've got an example. It's not from your program right now, but from Richmond.
Yes.
And let's take a look at that right now.
What's up?
How you doing?
I'm doing good. What's good?
Nothing much. Missing you, of course. You look good.
And you do too. You do for New Year.
was on my knees with the Bible in my hand. I figured that'd be better than going and hanging out. I couldn't think of a better way to spend it, but with God. Denise asked me to come over for a little while, and she had some champagne and stuff, but I chose not to. I just stayed home. How was your New Year's?
How was it? The same as usual. I'm doing good, right?
So it really just gives the family and the inmate a place to go to see each other, talk to each other face to face.
Yes, and you can see from the clip that that's important for a family to have the privacy and the ability to still have an intimate relationship with their loved one. And by intimate, I mean the ability to talk face to face, to at least see that person, and that person can see you. So we made that investment. But one of the things that Dr. Caldwell stressed to us when we decided that we would come on board was that as a church, we needed to be realistic in terms of what impact this would have on our community. And I think we were talking about this earlier in the green room, that in our communities, because we're in the urban center where we're doing ministry, I mean in the heart of the city, where you have most of the issues that we complain about day in and day out, one of those issues is the reality that too many of our family members are incarcerated.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And so when we polled our congregation and we had a truth-telling,
Norfolk United Methodist Church.
United Methodist Church, and we had a truth-telling session one Sunday in the middle of worship, and we just asked, how many of you have a family member, a loved one that is incarcerated? And it even startled me, the number of responses that were yes.
And these are people from all walks of life.
All
this is
walks
not
of life,
limited to a certain socioeconomic
across the board.
group. It's across the board in terms of that. Do you, Reesy, your husband is incarcerated out of state. Do you take advantage of this type of service that Sherry is talking about, or do you physically go?
I physically go and see him. The facility where he's located doesn't have this type of service set up. So driving to see him is how we visit. However, if there was a service, or if Sherry can extend it to out of state, I would love to take advantage of it. It's a great service, because people in my situation are just looking for somebody to care, that to not judge what the situation is, because as she said, we are in the situation now. So how do we live beyond that? Make it work.
It's also cost effective. It would be cost effective for you. You know?
So that, because it does take a lot to drive there. How often do you go?
I am now at every 6 months, I'm sorry to say. It's money. Used to be every other month, but as with anything, got to pay the bills, and he understands that, which I'm very lucky. He is not demanding visits or demanding calls. He understands that this has to be the way that it has to be right now.
Now, I would love to work with someone like Reesy, because there is a reality, and with the time that he's been away, and by the time he comes home, if it's 10 years, there's still some great needs, although you've done everything that you possibly can to make it normal.
And we don't have a lot of time left, but give me a sense of some of the things that Reesy is going to expect, especially as it gets closer.
Prison life is a different life, of course, than our life that we live here. The language that they use, just the behaviors itself, coming back into the community. A person who has not been inside of a wall will have to get used to certain things about those individuals. They are regimented. They do everything at a certain time. They're told when to eat, when to sleep, when to lay down. They go to classes, some of them. So there's a lot of things that's just routine, and it's a ritual. Now, when you come home, when he comes home, if he was used to going into the room and laying on the cot at 12 o'clock, he's going to still want to do that. But then real life says, no, you can't do that anymore. What we need to do now is find you some work. Or it's just so much on that person receiving, a person who has been incarcerated. It is a lot. And the honeymoon period is a wonderful period.
Yeah, you talked about that honeymoon period. Talk about that a little bit.
That honeymoon period is wonderful. And just because we're community this is a community show. You know, when you are together and you're intimate, everything's fine the first month or so, but then the bills have to be paid.
That's right.
You know, all of those things that you were
Real
doing
life kicks back
real
in.
life kicks in, and arguments occur. When I've had women call me and say, Miss Williams, you better come and get them, as if they were my husbands. And I'm like, okay. I've had to come out on Saturdays and talk with couples where they were really going at it to intervene and to sit down and to counsel and to talk with them. Real life it's different than, and the other thing is your accountability is different now than it will be when he returns, and you need to understand that there's a different level of accountability. You're used to being able to move and flow and go when you want to. Now it's like, where you going? You're gonna love that. You're gonna love that initially.
Talk about that now, actually, and we had a life together outside before this incarceration, but I am very much aware, and I have told him, you're gonna be in the way.
Yes.
You are going to be in the way.
Because your lifestyle
Yes.
is different and has changed
Yes.
over those 10 years. We are just about out of time, but we're going to include the information for each of you on our website so that families who are out there can really reach out and get the help that they need. And I am so appreciative of each of you coming on, because this is a topic, like we said, it's not easy to talk about, but it's very much a part of our community. If you had one quick thing that you wanted to say to people who might find themselves in this situation, what would it be?
I would say find a resource, get a support group in place immediately, and realize that you don't have to live your life in shame.
Okay, 5 seconds.
I would say that I have implemented programs through my church, support groups, peer support groups, and different things that I know inmates will need when they leave Abundant Life Ministries.
Okay, Dr. Daniels?
I would say to churches and faith communities to move out of your comfort zones and to look for opportunities to create ministry that will really impact our communities for the long term and in a positive way.
Thank you so much for joining us today, ladies. I really appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
when we come back, a beautiful way to showcase the beautiful African American women of the Peninsula. But first, a look at what's happening in Hampton Roads. Welcome back. It's called Women of a New Tribe, but it's not a play or a television show. It's an up-close look at the physical and spiritual beauty of Black women captured by the still photography lens. Our Lisa Godley went to see the exhibit, which is currently on display in Newport News. And what makes the exhibit even more special is that it features Peninsula women whose work, dedication, and commitment have helped shape the community.
You may or may not recognize these faces, captured in a style reminiscent of 1930s Hollywood, but they're women just like you or someone you know. They're educators, politicians, entertainers, mothers, wives, and grandmothers. And they were all selected to be a part of the Women of a New Tribe exhibit currently on display at the Downing Gross Cultural Arts Center in Newport News. The man behind these engaging photographs is Jerry Telefero, who says his traveling exhibit all began when he was in Memphis, shooting portfolios for models on the weekends.
I had this idea of, a series with masks, and we took a number of pictures, and they came out pretty good. Morgan Freeman used to have a charity, I guess he still does, that he worked out of Memphis called Heartbeats for Africa. And they asked a number of photographers and artists to donate pictures, and we donated about 8 of these pictures with the masks. And, people liked them. Some guy came in from a gallery and bought all of them, and we kind of figured that we were on to something.
Since then, the exhibit has traveled to 20 cities across the United States and 2 abroad, each stop picking up new faces along the way. The gallery's executive director, Kay Sumner, is one of those faces.
Oh wow, it was an experience. I've never participated in a photo shoot before, so it was camera, lights, action for about 2 hours, but it was for a good cause, so I was excited to do it.
The Women of a New Tribe exhibit features 24 women from Newport News. They were selected because either they themselves or a member of their family has made significant contributions to this community. The featured faces include visionaries like Flora Crittenden, who has a math and science magnet school named in her honor, or former Newport News School Board Chair Effie Ash. We asked Telefaro why he chose to photograph the women in black and white.
I've always been fascinated with the photography of 1920s and 30s and 40s Hollywood. The pictures were really crafted, they were very dramatic, and they got attention.
In addition to the local women who are featured, the photographs are broken down into categories, from faces to forms to tribal beauty. Everywhere you look are representations from all facets of life, and you can see these women of a new tribe up close and personal through the end of March. For Another View, I'm Lisa Godley.
And for more information on Women of a New Tribe, visit our website, anotherview.tv, and click on the link. And while you're there, please sign up for our e-newsletter so that you will know about upcoming program topics. And that's our show for this evening. We'll see you next Friday night for Another View.